So this little infographic here just shows a thing that myself and my mentor spoke about, which, although learning is not necessarily always linear, he recommended that each time I transition between a given activity, that I have made sure that pupils have hit the previous learning objective before I look to move on, and I need to have a better understanding of where pupils are in relation to the learning objectives before deciding to move on. So, for example, in this lesson plan here, we were looking at defensive lines in rugby, and I wanted to make sure, for example, before we transitioned from the changing room to the field, so from the first blank square into the second blank square, had pupils achieved that bronze objective? Could we make productive use of the changing room time in order to do this? So in order to promote those outcomes, I showed them a footage of an England-Ireland rugby game, pausing it when England had themselves set in a defensive line to see if the pupils could notice what England were doing each time that they were setting their defensive line. Then simply got pupils to stand on the right-hand side of the room if they felt like they were confident that they had a better idea of what a defensive line looked like, and stand on the left if they weren't sure. Now, what this did for this system in particular was it made it much easier to set the scene for what I expected when we went into the en masse bulldog, which was flat defensive lines. But I also wanted to provide that precursor just so it would help smooth the transition, and so pupils could at least get a visual for what I was after in terms of this game. Now, in terms of my lesson planning, by making sure that I was specifically linking the drills or the activities with a certain learning objective, and by specifically communicating this objective at each available opportunity with the pupils, this I felt made them more aware of what they needed to do in order to achieve my learning outcomes. And finally, I feel like this was reflected in my lesson feedback from the lesson, which my mentor noted that that relating the lesson back to the lesson objectives helped students monitor their progress and identify what they needed to do to go from there. And I also felt like I was getting better at promoting their progress by demonstrating activities, by making sure that even pupils who weren't participating were still focused with the learning objectives set, and making sure that at the end we still had time for a plenary to assess students' progression.